What's up, Nashville? This is Beau with the Free Speech Podcast, brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your broker for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. I've got a PSA that we're going to start with, a public service announcement related to donating blood. I just got back from donating blood myself, my first time ever donating blood in my 43 years of life. And, I learned a lot from the process. And the point I'd like to make is there are many different ways to donate blood. There are different types of blood donations. And each of those blood donations has positive health benefits for the donor, right? So you're doing good for someone that needs blood, but also, you can be self-interested in that it is actually providing you with positive health benefits, including better energy, right? So at age 43, I'll do anything to have better energy throughout the day, not be sluggish, and getting that blood out of your body, and then the process by which your body regenerates new blood cells is really super beneficial. So I'm no expert on the matter, but I would suggest, considering donating blood as a kind of a health hack for yourself to put yourself in a position to feel better, especially later in age. You get into your 40s and you get a little bit desperate to feel better. I think donating blood is going to be in my routine. So I want to break down for you real quick the different ways to donate blood, right? So there's whole blood donation, where they just take all of your blood, usually in about a pint. And then there's other types of donations whereby they take the blood out of you, they extract a portion of your blood, and then they pump the remainder back in you, right? There's platelet donation, plasma donation, double red cell donation is the one that I did, right? It's painless. It takes about 30 minutes. You're strapped up to this machine. For a few minutes, it'll extract it. For a few minutes, it'll put it back in you. And before you know it, it's over. There's autologous donation and directed donation, right? And the reason I did double red cell donation is my hemoglobin in my blood was reading high. And the easiest way to get that hemoglobin count down, I was told, was the double red cell donation. So there are so many positive health benefits to donating blood, they limit how often you can actually donate it. So the double red cell donation, you can only do 3 times per year, so about every 4 months. If you're doing the whole blood donation, which I imagine is the most ordinary way to donate blood, you can do that about every 2 months. And then each of these different donation types have different timelines associated with them. So I would suggest, if your health is not exactly how you want it to be, which I would think would be about 90% of folks, consider the health benefits of donating blood, so you can do good for someone else and do good for yourself at the same time. And as I said, you get into your 40s, we get a little bit desperate for ways to feel better. Perhaps blood donation should be one of those health hacks that you consider. So that's my PSA for today. Of course, we're going to bring you up to date on all of the big stories in Nashville commercial real estate over the past couple weeks. The Nashville market is changing in a number of ways, and I'm going to try to keep that trend as we go through some of these stories. Let me just give you a quick overview of the stories we're going to cover today, and then we'll get into it. Post Malone gets his own bar on Broadway. There is no bigger business in Nashville than celebrity branded bars. Post Malone is the next one to license his name to one of these establishments and just collect those checks for letting them use his name, image, and likeness, right? Franklin's Margin District, a very high-profile new development in Franklin, is set to cost, just on the construction side, this isn't the price that one would need to pay to purchase it, just the price to assemble the land and build it. $917 per square foot, a staggering price per square foot for a new development anywhere. When I saw those numbers, I thought, wow, this is a development that will probably work. Is it going to work in a profitable way? That remains to be seen. I'd be scared to death if my construction cost was $917 per square foot. I'll tell you that story. Another development project, instead of being built, will be resold. And that's kind of a trend on today's podcast. Next story, yet another development project to be resold, not to be built, but to be resold. That is a big trend in Nashville right now, whereby we had 5 years of high-profile developments being announced. Many of those developers now giving up and trying to flip those projects for a profit. Next, Marriott is coming to the North Gulch. A story about the challenges of borrowing money today, which is the reason for many of these developments not coming out of the ground and why they're being resold. I'll tell you the story of one of the most high-profile developers in Nashville who has had a heck of a time the last few years borrowing money for what would be the tallest building in all of Nashville. A Wedgwood, Houston shipping container apartment complex sells for $19 million. Always interesting to see these unique construction methods and then see them having real success in the market and see them having success selling for a profit. A shipping container apartment complex. The state of Tennessee and Elon Musk company officials are now discussing an underground tunnel that would connect BNA to downtown, so the airport to downtown via underground tunnel. Next, a Metro Center office building sells for $4 million less than it traded just 4 years ago. So these are not necessarily the norm in Nashville. That's certainly not true. Most properties are selling for a higher price than they last sold, but more so than in the last 10 years, you're seeing properties, primarily office buildings, trade at prices lower than they traded for previously. I'll tell you that story. Office conversions and demolitions will now exceed new construction in the United States. So office conversions, meaning office buildings that are being converted to other use and no longer being used as offices, and demolitions of office buildings are set to exceed the square footage of new construction for the first time in quite a while. I'll walk you through that. A dual branded hotel is coming to East Nashville. I'll walk you through that. And lastly, an In-N-Out is planned for the Rivergate Mall. I'll give you an update on what In-N-Out's plans are for Middle Tennessee. So let's get into it. Ohio-based TC Restaurant Group announced its partnership with the Grammy Award nominated. My man didn't even win the Grammy, and still we're dropping Grammy Award nominated musician Post Malone. I think all of those awards are a racket, so I don't know why we give them so much attention, but nevertheless, Grammy Award nominated is enough. The new venue will be housed at 305 Broadway, the former site of Tequila Cowboy and Wannabe's Karaoke Bar. So those two former locations being consolidated into one. This location is next to Jason Aldean's Kitchen and Rooftop Bar. The 26,000 square foot venue will include 6 bars, 3 stages, a full service dining room and rooftop. The site is undergoing construction and will be Broadway's largest ground floor space once completed, which I think is interesting. I would imagine the ground floor outproduces every other floor in terms of sales. TC Restaurant Group operates entertainment venues across downtown Nashville, including Jason Aldean's Kitchen and Rooftop Bar, Lainey Wilson's Bell Bottoms Up, Luke's 32 Bridge, Miranda Lambert's Casa Rosa, I'm going to give you a prediction on that one. It will not be long before they rebrand Miranda Lambert's Casa Rosa. I'm just not convinced she's a big enough star to really be a draw. And Morgan Wallen's This Bar and Tennessee Kitchen. So TC Restaurant Group, one of the heavy hitters on Broadway, they have just enlisted Post Malone for their newest venture, which I would sure think would be doing well. 26,000 square feet, 6 bars, 3 stages, and a rooftop to be located next to Jason Aldean's location. Remember, these are all licensed deals. These artists don't actually own equity in any of these businesses or any of these properties. They simply get paid a few cents off of every sale. And I used to know exactly what they got paid. And as I get older, I just don't have the memory for those details anymore. But at one point, I did have someone that was in the industry walk me through exactly how much they get paid. And the total that these artists receive on an annual basis is in the millions to license their name for some of these bar and restaurant concepts. Let's keep moving. Franklin's Margin District to cost $917 per square foot just to build. The $165 million mixed-use development offers a specific address of 805 Columbia Avenue, which is located near the city's 5 points. The margin will include 25 luxury homes, which are actually condos. They're calling them homes, but they're condos, as well as 50,000 square feet of street-level retail, along with 50,000 square feet of office space. Collectively, the buildings will offer about 180,000 square feet upon completion. So if you take 165 million and divide it by 180,000, you get $917 per square foot. The former Handy Hardware building, this is an existing old hardware store that's on one of the far sides of the development, will remain and be included in the development. So they're going to reuse that existing structure, probably for some type of retail concept. Margin District residences will be located on the 3rd floor of the future buildings and offer either 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. Each will have its own private terrace and secure parking in a gated section of a lower level garage. Reservations for the homes began in November and are priced starting about $2 million. So the starting price is $2 million for 2,000 to 3,000 square feet, which puts them right at about 1,000 a square foot. 13 of the condos have been pre-sold already. So you've got, at the lowest level, you've got retail, which makes sense. At the second level, you've got offices, which makes sense. And on the 3rd floor, you've got condos with rooftop terraces. And the reason there's rooftop terraces is the folks at the city of Franklin required, if they were to go 3 floors, that there had to be a step back on the 3rd floor. So the 3rd floor will be step back, and in front of that step back is where that terrace is going to be, I'm sure. So while this is a massive new development in a location that's really going to help the Columbia Avenue corridor, which is kind of a tired corridor, in my opinion. This is Columbia almost into the heart of downtown Franklin. They have spent a lot of money assembling this site. I don't know if it's been debt financed or not, but if it has been debt financed, they've been carrying these properties for, I think, 5 years, up to 5 years on some of them. So they've already got quite an investment just in the land and the carrying costs here before even really building this out for $917 per square foot. I'm not going to be a buyer here. I have no interest in owning a condo. I have way too many children to be living in a condo. But I do understand the appeal if you're in a childless home of living in a condo in downtown Franklin as an older person. I think would be pretty awesome. So I can understand the appeal here. I think it's going to be great for Franklin, and I hope it's great in terms of profitability when this all gets done. Another development project to be resold. So if you've been following the podcast for any period of time, we've been updating you on all these high-profile developments that have been announced over the years, with most of those developers actually owning the dirt on which the development would be built. Most developers don't want to do that. Most developers don't want to actually close on the dirt until they've got everything lined up in terms of approvals, site plans, design, and financing. And then they'll go out and close on the dirt at the same time they close on their financing for the construction. But many of these guys have taken down the land, had the carrying costs for very expensive land for a number of years, spent much money on the soft costs, right, which are the design costs, only to give up and say, man, I couldn't finance it. I couldn't line up the lender. I couldn't line up my equity investments. I give up. I'm going to try to just flip the land for a profit now. That's happening more and more and more in Nashville. We've got developers giving up, and it's really not a function of the market being soft. It's a function of not being able to line up all the capital to do these projects. A North Davidson County site planned for townhomes allowing short-term stays and for which land had been cleared for the structures has now been listed for sale. This is a 6.1 acre property at 2425 Brick Church Pike. Nashville-based Arden Development Company paid $8.75 million for the property way back in 2022. Arden then had the site cleared for what was to have been called Novello, designed to have 66 residences. So, this was a big business in Nashville. Townhomes to be used as short-term rentals. And that business really fell off. It got very competitive. Profitability is down in that business for the most part. So to get those projects financed, both debt and equity, has been increasingly difficult. So you're seeing a lot of these townhome concepts stopped in their tracks. Many of the developers are kind of waiting out the market to see if it improves before moving forward. Some are sick of carrying it. So, $8.75 million, the carrying cost on that ain't nothing, right? So you're seeing more and more of these high-profile developments being resold because the developers couldn't line it all up to proceed with the deal. This is a much more high-profile development that I'm going to catch you up on now. Yet another development project to be resold. The Rutledge Hill property, once home to Cumulus Media in Long Island for a 3-tower project, is now for sale for an undisclosed price. It was announced in 2021 that Chicago-based Centrum Realty and Development paid $34 million for the dirt. Overlooking much of downtown with its noteworthy elevation, the property recently saw the disassembly of the Cumulus Radio Tower, a structure that in part defined the neighborhood due to its soaring height. The 3.37 acre property has a main address of 500 2nd Avenue South in Rutledge Hill. Centrum had eyed for the site a 32-story residential building, a 39-floor residential structure, and a 29-story hotel tower. A massive, massive deal. And that's what you need to do to justify these land costs. $34 million for the dirt, you better have an extreme amount of density to make up for that upfront cost, which they were planning to do with towers of 32, 39, and 29 stories. Again, what's killing these deals is the inability to raise enough capital today. Our market, to the extent that it's struggling, is still struggling from a capital perspective. On smaller deals, you're talking about bringing your own equity and then finding usually a local lender that will borrow you up to 75% loan to value, maybe 80% loan to value. Those lenders have really pumped the brakes on those types of deals, and these big multi-$100 million new developments are struggling from both the lender side and the equity side. I'm told that the lending side has loosened up just a little bit. The equity side still more difficult to do. So many of these developers, if you look at just the equity piece, right? So you're going to put, let's say you put 25% down in equity. Of that 25%, most developers only want to put in about 5% of their own money. So it's a fraction of the down payment required. And then they go out and get equity partners for the other 95% of the equity. So you're not only going out and trying to find a lender, you're trying to find an equity partner that can bring the vast majority of the cash needed to close the transaction. Many of these developers aren't using their own cash to do these developments. They're really being compensated based on their performance and actually getting it done. They're making their money from performing the development rather than much of the upside from it selling. So, yet another development project to be resold in Nashville. This is a real theme right now, and until we really get some movement in our capital markets, in our lenders' willingness to lend money, even at current market rates, they need to be able to be willing to lend. We're going to see many more of these projects on hold, delaying, or at worst case, if the carrying costs get too high, you're seeing guys like this looking to understand if the market will pay them a premium to get out of that deal. Time will tell, but very, very difficult time to be an owner of a property like that. Very, very difficult time to be a seller of a property like that for all those stated reasons. A Marriott is coming to the North Gulch. Marriott Hotel project with 84 high-end residents is coming to the North Gulch. New York-based development firm Tidal Real Estate Partners will undertake the project. The luxury hotel will be located at 1101 Grundy Street and rise 355 feet. If standing today, it would rank among Nashville's 25 to 30 tallest buildings. Pre-sales remain underway for what will be called the Residences at the Nashville Edition. Not a good name. Don't like it. Supposedly they're going to stylize it as Edition, but the Residences at the Nashville Edition is too much, with the units priced starting at $1.6 million and ranging from 1 to 4 bedrooms, including 2 half-floor penthouses. So 84 residences, high-end residences, 355-foot tower, and you're going to start at $1.6 million for a 1-bedroom. The tower will stand 28 floors. It will also include 272 hotel rooms and about 10,000 square feet of retail space. So you've got 84 condos, 272 hotel rooms, and about 10,000 feet of retail space. Amenities for the Residences at the Nashville Edition, terrible name, will include an outdoor pool with cabanas, full-service spa, and in-home dining, a golf simulator, a fitness center, and multiple lounges. But this is the part I wouldn't like. If I'm spending that much money on a condo, I would not want the amenities to be shared with the hotel component. But that's how they're going to design it. So you're going to come home, you're going to go to the fitness center, and you're going to be surrounded by hungover tourists that happen to be there for a few nights. I'm not sure I want to do that, but what do I know? I'm not a buyer for downtown condos. The challenges of borrowing money today. I think this is a very interesting story. Nashville-based development company Giartana is looking to close on a $360 million construction loan. That's just the loan for the construction, after pivoting away from a previous lender to begin construction on a 60-story residential skyscraper called Paramount. Tony Giartana terminated a loan that involved a $172 million senior loan from Bank OZK and a $60 million mezzanine loan with New York-based Related Fund Management, which were finalized back in 2024. This was such a big deal. Securing these two loans back in 2024 that it was on the front page of the Business Journal. When you're on the front page of a business journal just for getting a loan, I think that speaks to the lending environment right now, okay? And after all of that hoopla and all that celebration, he's walking away from both of these loans. The cost to do so was $23 million, leaving Giartana and his equity investors owning the Paramount site located at 1010 Church Street debt-free. I don't know if there was a termination fee in that $23 million. I suspect that $23 million was used for primarily site costs, maybe soft costs, I don't think there was a $23 million termination fee. I think that's just was the balance on that senior loan. I could be wrong there. Giarratana said the team has raised 92 million of the 100 million in total equity needed. So I was just talking about equity. So most of these developers are not putting in a lot of their own money. They're raising both the debt and the equity, and they're 92% set on the equity piece. 40 condominiums have now been reserved, with a total pre-sales now topping at $120 million. The process to undertake the approximately $460 million development has been complex. When completed, it will yield a 750-foot tall contemporary tower that will be Nashville's tallest. During the 12 months that followed the closing of the loan with Bank OZK and related fund, Giarratana and his investors worked to complete their capital stack with a $100 million junior mezzanine loan, right? So you go from senior loan to mezzanine loan to junior mezzanine loan. And the difference there is who gets paid back first, right? So if something goes sideways and the development doesn't work, the junior mezzanine loan is the first one to lose their money after the equity investment. Equity loses their money first, junior mezzanine loan loses their money next, mezzanine loan loses their money next, and then the senior lender loses it last. That's the issue here. So they were going to try to go out and get 3 different levels of loans plus their equity investors. We made presentations to 69 qualified lenders. 69 presentations is so much. They told us they love Nashville, the Nashville Yards neighborhood. They love Paramount and our track record, but our multi-tiered capital structure was the problem. So in April, on the 1-year anniversary of the loans, Giarratana and his team exercised the right to terminate the loans. On April 18th, we signed a term sheet with a significant new lender who is in theory going to bring all of the borrowed funds to the transaction. Giarratana has set his goal is now to complete construction of Paramount, to offer 360 apartments, 140 condominiums, and a 517 space parking garage in the summer of 2028. So, if the arguably one of the top developers in all of Nashville, with one of the best, if not the best, track record in downtown Nashville, has been working for years and years just to borrow the money to proceed with his new project, only to have to terminate those loans that were so highly celebrated, even on the front page of the Business Journal, and start over with a totally new lender, I think that speaks to the challenges of borrowing money in today's marketplace. It is a bigger problem, in my opinion. The availability of financing is a bigger problem than the interest rate. Interest rate, don't get me wrong, is a problem. But I think the availability, the ability to go out and have a bank actually loan you money is a bigger problem than what the current interest rate is. So that, if you want to understand the struggles that we confront on a daily basis in the commercial real estate business, it is all related to the ability to borrow money and at the cost of which to do so. Wedgwood, Houston shipping container apartment complex sells for $19 million. Eye-catching apartment complex called 83 Freight is nearing completion and has been sold. This is a 2.1 acre property. The transaction is equivalent to about $229,000 per unit. These are shipping containers, $229,000 per unit. 83 Freight offers 83 apartment flats derived from shipping freight containers and is billed as the largest shipping container residential project in North America. Each building stands 3 levels, with the top units offering rooftop decks. 83 Freight includes studios spanning about 320 square feet, okay? We just said the transaction is equivalent to $229,000 per unit. Some of those units in that calculation are just 320 square foot studios. 1 bedroom units, 640 square feet, right? These are all equivalent of 320 square foot, the size of a shipping container, right? So you put 2 shipping containers together, now you got 1 bedroom units. 2 bedroom units, 960 square feet, 3 shipping containers, and some go all the way up to 1,280 square feet, 4 shipping containers, right? So I don't know. I like the idea. I think it's creative. I'm sure it was difficult to pull off. But 229,000 per unit was units as small as 320 square feet. That's a big price, my man. That is a big price. So we'll see where that deal trades the next time it trades. It'll be interesting to see if there's any room to go above 19 million. You know, if Wedgwood Houston still continues to have its moment, perhaps it's possible. But again, that's a high price to pay for what you're getting there. Very, very cool though. Largest shipping container residential project in North America, right here in Nashville. All right, we've got 5 stories left for you. Okay, some are going to go quick though. So Tennessee and Elon Musk company, also called the Boring Company, right, discuss a tunnel connecting BNA and downtown. If it materializes, it would take cues from the Boring Company's Las Vegas tunnel network that allows for fleets of Musk's Tesla electric vehicles to transport passengers. So this is a tunnel in Las Vegas that is only using Tesla electric vehicles to taxi people back and forth. A specific tunnel route, a price tag, and how the project would be financed are uncertain. A future tunnel connecting downtown to BNA could cover up to 10 miles. So this is very, very preliminary. I think this is how things should be done. You know, if it's possible to make this work, you should talk about it and figure it out. If it's not possible, if it doesn't make sense, then that's the outcome one comes to. But it's nice to see folks in government thinking outside the box. Whereas we all know, as we think about government employees, we think of people that are just punching the clock and getting paid handsomely to do so without really trying to make life better for their constituents. So I love to hear stuff like that where you've got out of the box thinking from government officials, because it is so rare. Metro Center office building sells for $4 million less than it traded 4 years ago. So this is kind of a confusing story. I'm going to try to keep it simple for you, but the idea is, you know, this is another office building whose value has reset, right? A Metro Center office building sold for $16.5 million 4 years ago has now been acquired by a global asset management company for about $4 million less than that figure. London-based Schroders, the LLC, paid $12.58 million for the 6-acre property, which is located at 2 Vantage Way. The seller was an LLC associated with Boise, Idaho-based A10 Capital, known for making real estate loans, which paid only $7.4 million for the property in 2024. The seller in that deal paid $16.5 million. So 4 years ago, the property trades at $16.5 million. It then retrades last year to who I am assuming was the lender or one of the lenders on the transaction for only $7.1 million. So the lender takes it back at $7.1 million, and then they turn around and flip it in 2025 for $12.58 million, which is still $4 million short of where it traded just 4 years ago. Located near apartment building the Duke of Nashville, the site's 5-story modernist building is called the Ivy and opened in 1976. You know, if you take nothing else from this story, it's that prices of office buildings fluctuate greatly. And the reason for that is office buildings, multi-tenant office buildings, are valued based on the cash flow that they generate. So if you buy an office building that's fully occupied, you're paying for the cash flow that it generates at that time. If you then mismanage the asset and all of a sudden the cash flow goes down because you have vacancy, now your price has reset much lower. And if you get to a place where your vacancy falls so low that you have no cash flow, you have a negative cash flow property, all of a sudden there are very, very few buyers out there with the willingness and the ability to buy that property from you. So you can't resell it in the market because it's lost so much value. It ultimately goes back to the lender who snaps it up for 7.1 million. The lender then turns around and finds a way to get the deal done at over 12 million. So, I worked through the last downturn of the 2010, 2011, 2012. We did a lot of office work. And so I've seen that firsthand. It's very difficult to turn an office building around quickly. There are many things to consider. Most of these tenants that you're choosing from have existing leases that they don't really want to move into your building till their current lease is up. But even then, you've still got tenant build-outs, which are quite costly. You've got high real estate commissions to pay. The office building business is a very difficult business unless you have lots of cash from which to draw in times of hardship, right? So if you're just a mom and pop investor, buying bigger multi-tenant office buildings is a very, very risky thing to do, because when the time gets tough, it's very hard to turn it around unless you have access to cash to do so. Here's a national story for you regarding offices, yeah? Office conversions, meaning change from office to something else, and demolitions, meaning just taking that office building down altogether, are now exceeding office new construction. There hasn't been an inflection point at which the conversions and demolition of U.S. office space has outpaced new office construction since at least the year 2000, 25 years ago. Change in activity could help lower a national vacancy rate hovering around an all-time high of 19%. The analysis of the market activity across the largest 58 U.S. markets found that 23 million square feet of office space is designated for demolition or conversion, while developers expect to complete just 12 million square feet of new office space. So this isn't even close. 23 million versus 12 million. So talk about an inflection point. That's not like conversions and demolitions are barely beating out new construction. No, almost twice the amount of new construction. New office development is facing headwinds similar to those for conversion projects, with elevated interest rates, uncertainty in the market, and higher construction costs. The continued desire by some office tenants for high-end space is pushing obsolete offices from the market, with about 64% of the conversions underway being located in central business districts. The best way to think about conversions is that they are happening at a higher rate, but they are still quite rare as a share of total office inventory. They are happening to office buildings that were not really competitive in the office leasing market anyway. About 76% of the active conversion projects are expected to make way for apartments. So of those office buildings being converted, 76% are being converted to apartments. Next in line comes hotels. The number of residential units added to the nation's inventory from conversions won't solve the national housing shortage, but it will help, especially on a local level. Meanwhile, the office market will benefit as obsolete office space is removed from the market in favor of the highest and best use. So quite a situation playing out in the office business right now. The truth of the matter is there are many cities in that 58 big markets whose best years are behind them. They've been mismanaged by the local government. Maybe there are market trends that took industry out of the cities and states. So many of these older cities in the Rust Belt, for example, their best years are behind them. So they've got an abundance of office space that there's no reason to believe will be in desire again. So these old central business district office buildings are either being demolished or converted to apartments. And let's not assume that office conversions to apartments or hotels are an easy or inexpensive thing. They're very, very difficult to pull off. They're very expensive to pull off. And the end result generally is not better than just building that same amount of units new. So there's a lot of talk about office conversions being the obvious choice for some of these obsolete office buildings, but giving the depth of those floor plans floor plates rather, giving where the elevator banks are, where the stairwells are, how many stairwells are there. There are many different rules that one has to play by rather, if you're converting office to apartments, because apartments have different rules to play by than the offices did. So it's hard to get it done in a practical matter, and it's hard to get it done from just a profitability standpoint. So I don't think office conversions to apartments are really the solution to any problem. If you can get a few done here and there, especially for some of these older buildings that have kind of ornate details and are very cool looking, maybe have some name recognition, they can work, but conversions are not going to be the savior. And unfortunately, I think many of these cities whose best years are behind it are going to see an increased amount of office buildings being demolished altogether and probably replaced with much smaller structures. Two quick stories for you, and then we're going to wrap up here. Dual branded hotel coming to East Nashville. A hotel building long-eyed for East Nashville will house both a Hyatt Place and a Hyatt House. Indianapolis-based Sun Development and Management Company previously had sought a fall 2024 groundbreaking for the project. The project will be undertaken on a 0.8-acre property located at 408 Woodland Street. The building to offer 258 rooms in 12 floors. Of the 258 rooms, 114 will be extended stay and 144 will be conventional. Sun paid $5 million for the East Nashville property in 2022. So a few things to think about there. Dual branded hotels are becoming more commonplace, where you can have traditional rooms and extended stay rooms all under the same roof, right, to profit maximize. I think a lot of people would be interested to know that you can build 258 hotel rooms on less than an acre. 0.8 acres for 258 rooms and all the parking spots to park it. Also, keep in mind they paid $5 million for the dirt 3 years ago, so they've been holding the property and eating those carrying costs for 3 years already. All of this is to say, the development business is difficult. I'm not in the development business. I don't want to be. I don't think I have the guts to do it. I've always had a healthy fear of the development business. But I do think, developers are crucial to a thriving city. 12 floors in East Nashville is going to be one of the bigger buildings in East Nashville. It's going to stick out. It's going to be a very cool project. I think it's good for the neighborhood, and I think it's very, very good that we have developers willing to take on projects like that, because there is an extreme amount of work involved. There's even more so an extreme amount of risk involved. So, I've said it before, but my hat goes out to developers willing to take on all that risk, and real men and women with the fortitude to get those projects done. Much respect. Some of those deals exit for big gains. Some of them don't. You don't hear about the ones that don't. You hear about the ones that do, and we think they're greedy developers, but you have no idea how much time and stress and frustration and how many hoops one has to jump through when dealing with all of the different parties that play with one of these new developments. Last, In-N-Out Burger is now planned for a Rivergate Mall site, the second location for the Nashville area. That's interesting, right? So the second location in all of Nashville is going to Madison, to the Rivergate Mall site, a location that has been stigmatized for a number of years. The first Tennessee location is already under construction in Franklin. That's right by my house, as a matter of fact, next to its future Eastern U.S. headquarters site. Another location soon to follow is already planned for the Century Farms development in Antioch. As part of this site plan approval, Metro also approved to donate $300,000 to In-N-Out Burger if they would build on this site. So that's an active Metro trying to get some positive momentum for that Rivergate area, which of course is going to be a huge redevelopment over the next couple of years. By 2029, the company will close its Irvine, California headquarters, and employees will be expected to move to either its Baldwin Park, California location or to Franklin. So my family was just out in Salt Lake City for a national soccer tournament. While they were out there, they tried In-N-Out Burger. I'm told it is pretty good. I'm told that it is, you know, they only have burgers. They don't have any chicken tenders. So if you have kids, it's hard to pull off without chicken tenders. I'm also told their fries are good but different. I haven't looked into it. It's almost like they're baked and not fried. I'm not sure, but I guess it's kind of real basic food that has kind of a cult following. So I'm looking forward to the Franklin location getting open for business so that I can give it a shot. I love a burger. It's a great way to get protein. It's kind of an all-American meal, so I'm rooting for In-N-Out. I like the owners. I like what they're all about. I like that they're exiting California and coming here to beautiful Tennessee. So I'm rooting for it to be good. I'd like to give them some business. So that rounds out today's podcast. I hope we brought you some information of value, perhaps even entertained you. As always, we are brought to you by Beechwood Commercial Real Estate Brokerage, your AI-enhanced broker for sellers in Nashville and the Southeast. If you are a commercial property owner who's considering selling, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide you with all the information you need to make an educated decision on whether or not right now is the appropriate time to list and sell your commercial property. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you again soon.